I will be explaining soil formation over geologic time. Well, you may ask, how is soil formed? Soils form simply from bedrock, degrading and turning into smaller and smaller pieces that makes it eventually soil, or grains of soil. It approximately takes about 2,000 years for soil to form. And many aspects, such as these five, which are soil forming factors from bedrock, are critical for turning this rock into soil. This includes the parent material, which is the bedrock, time, climate, relief, which is the topography of the area, and organisms. Let's go more in depth. First, let's talk about the parent material. The parent material is the bedrock, which can influence the color, texture, structure, mineral composition, and permeability. This is the main factor that degrades and turns into smaller and smaller pieces by weathering into soil. Another factor is time. It takes a long time for rock to turn into soil by a lot of factors. It actually takes about 2,000 years, as I said before, to turn an inch of soil from bedrock. And time is very critical. Also, time is very critical in determining profiles, because when the bedrock turns into soil, it slowly becomes distinguishable by layers and layers, seeing by which areas are the oldest and which areas are the youngest, developing profiles and horizons. Probably the most important factor is climate, which controls rate, type of soil formation, and vegetation distribution. This is due because of precipitation and temperature over a long period of time. Precipitation can lead to leaching to the rocks and also cause chemical weathering, because water can actually change the rock's chemical compound, turning it into soil. Also, temperature is very critical because it determines the rates of reaction when it comes to chemical and biological weathering, turning rock to soil. In addition, topography is important. It determines soil profile thickness due to the angle causing runoff, climate change, and also conditions. One main factor to biological weathering is organisms, which breaks down the rock. Organisms can cause soil development because organisms such as bacteria are critical for weathering of rock and the decomposition of plant litter. Let's talk about the components of soil. Soil mainly consists of air, water, and mineral particles. However, it is composed of very important smaller components, that is, organic material such as humus, litter, fermenting litter, and roots that's mainly contained in the whole horizon. Let's talk about these horizons. As soils develop over time, as I explained about the time factor, layers form, mainly going into two layers, topsoil and subsoil. It is mainly separated into 6 main horizons: O horizon, A horizon, E horizon, B horizon, C horizon, and R horizon. Let's talk about these horizons. The O horizon is probably the one you're probably familiar with, because the top horizon that contains the leaf litter, dead organic material, or partially decayed organic material. Usually the top, as you can see from your soil. However, there's also a horizon which you're familiar with, which is the topsoil. The topsoil is usually the darkest layer of soil because it contains the most organic material, because it has a mixture of humus, minerals, and things necessary for crops. Farmers need the O horizon, but the A horizon is where it's at when it comes to crops. Under that's the E horizon, which is the leaching zone. Why is it the leaching zone? Well, it has a lot of airspace where leaching can occur due to the mixture of soil types and minerals. Right below that is the mineral zone, or the yellowish and orangish color, evident due to the large amounts of minerals, which is the B horizon. Under that's the C horizon, which is very close to the last horizon, which is partially weathered rock that is slowly forming due to time into these horizons. However, it's still rock, and it will take a long time. It's a large piece of gravel, but it's not what it is supposed to be. Bedrock, which is R horizon, which is the solid material which slowly weathers down into the C horizon. Weathering. Well, weathering is the breakdown and decomposition of rocks and minerals, which includes air, water, sun, and frost. There are 2 main types, physical and chemical. But there's also biological, which is very critical, which is basically organisms breaking down the rock. As I explained before, the bacteria. Let's go into the physical characteristics of weathering. Physical weathering involves continual breakdown of rocks into smaller and smaller particles, and the breakdown of rocks mechanically. It's not chemical weathering. It's not water. It's actually not changing anything with the rocks. It's just going into smaller pieces, staying in their state. Temperature changes, abrasions, frost can all cause rocks to break down, but it's not changing the chemical structure. Physical characteristics of soil includes color, texture, and location, not changing its chemical characteristics. However, chemical characteristics in weathering, it's very critical for the alteration and breakdown of rocks. It changes the chemical composition of rock minerals and breaks down the rocks, changing the chemical makeup. This is when the minerals within the rocks react with water, air, or other chemicals, and characteristics include water getting involved into the rock, breaking it down, color change, and chemical reactions breaking down the rock, turning it into soil slowly and slowly. There are many types of soil: sand, silt, clay, loam. This is determined by the size, as you can see in this picture right here. This is a sand particle, this is a silt particle, and this is a clay particle. Sand contains larger grains that can't hold water for large periods of time because of its large. Silt, medium fine grains, can hold water for some short periods of time, but not as good as clay, which are smaller fine grains that has low permeability and it's very compact. Going back to silt, they're more so medium, right in the middle. However, what farmers want is loam, which is the combination of small particles, which consist of these three, that is excellent for growth because of the variety of permeability and texture. Over here you can see sand, which is smaller grains, larger grains. Over here is clay, which is the smaller fine grains. Or you can see silt, which is the medium grains. And over here you can see is the dark loam, which contains the organic material, but also all kinds of these soil, which is very good for growing. What farmers look at, or what we tend to look at to see the percentages, this triangle right here. What farmers usually want is this perfect loam right here. However, over here you can see is clay, silt, and sand. Over here would probably be a larger percentage of sand. Over here is a large percent of clay. Over here is a large percent of silt. There are all kinds of these soil around the world. But what's the best for growing is this loam. So looking at this triangle is very important to see what type of soil you may have. This is my presentation about soil formation over geologic times, its components, its physical characteristics, chemical characteristics, and its types. Thank you.